What's up, fight fans? This is Michael with Rock and Boxing Commentary. Title of today's video is Sanctioning Bodies, a Primer. These days, I feel like it must be a challenge for newer boxing fans to make sense of the sport/business of boxing. We have four major sanctioning bodies. In the order of how long they've been around, there's the WBA, the World Boxing Association, WBC, World Boxing Council, IBF, International Boxing Federation, and WBO, World Boxing Organization. So, where did all these sanctioning bodies come from, and why do people care what they say? Back in the beginning of 1960 and prior to the 1960s, I bet many of you would be surprised to learn that there was only one sanctioning body, and what was it called? The National Basketball Association. Just kidding, but it was the NBA. It was the National Boxing Association. Now, the National Boxing Association is what is now known as the WBA, the World Boxing Association. I think in around 1960, it switched to the World Boxing Association. And I believe that Sonny Liston was the first WBC champion. So everything was undisputed back in the days for a long time. They didn't have unifications because there was only one sanctioning body. And then the World Boxing Council was created in, maybe 1963. So probably Floyd Patterson or Sonny Liston was the first person to hold that title. And then, basically, I'm just going by heavyweights right now. All the heavyweight belts were unified for a long, long time. Even since the WBC originated, the heavyweight champions, Sonny Liston, then Muhammad Ali, then Joe Frazier, then George Foreman, then Ali again, they all automatically had the WBA and WBC titles. And two heavyweight champions wasn't really a thing. Now, when did this change? It was 1978. Muhammad Ali had lost the undisputed title in a shock upset to Leon Spinks, who only had like 8 pro fights at the time. And probably, no disrespect, but in my opinion, became one of the worst heavyweight champions of all time. So after Leon Spinks won the decision against Ali, he was needing to fight Larry Holmes. Or, excuse me, not Larry Holmes. He was needing to fight Ken Norton, who was the #1 contender. And rather than fight Ken Norton, the #1 contender, who probably would have knocked out Leon Spinks and would have been a nice addition to Ken Norton's career, that didn't happen. He opted instead for a rematch with Ali. That is the big point in time in history when the titles became divided, because Spinks was stripped of the WBC title and held on to the WBA title. He had a rematch with Ali, and Ali won a convincing decision to become the first 3-time heavyweight champion of the world of all time. Muhammad Ali was a 2-time undisputed champion. However, his third title reign, which I don't believe he defended the title. I'm almost sure he didn't defend the title. His third title reign was the WBA title only. He did not have the WBC title. And then at that point, Ken Norton was awarded the WBC title outside of the ring because he had beaten Jimmy Young in an elimination match. So in Ken Norton's first title defense, he defended against Larry Holmes, which was an epic fight. Larry Holmes won, went on to have around 20 successful title defenses for 7 years, one of the greatest reigns ever. And during that time, there was maybe around 15 WBA champions. I'll try to name a few of them. There was Ali, who retired. Then there was Big John Tate, Hercules Weaver, who knocked him out. Then there was Michael Dokes, who knocked him out. Then there was Jerry Coetzee, who knocked him out. Then there was Greg Page, who knocked him out. Then my memory starts failing me a little. I believe maybe it was Trevor Burbick. After that, there was Tim Witherspoon, who also later got the WBC title. I know Pinklin Thomas. No, I think Pinklin Thomas ended up having the WBC title. James Bone Crusher Smith. Yeah, he not. So anyway, during the same time, during the same time that Larry Holmes was going on his long, amazing title run, there was a whole bunch of WBA champions. At one point, Larry Holmes was, I believe, supposed to make a defense against Greg Page or Pinklon Thomas, and he did not want to do so. So he ended up vacating the title. And at that point, Robert Lee, who I believe used to be part of one of the other organizations, founded the International Boxing Federation. And they immediately gave their title to Holmes, who had never lost in the ring. So by giving the newly formed IBF title to the longest reigning undefeated heavyweight champion, Larry Holmes, this gave the IBF immediate credibility. And it seems like the IBF was pretty much immediately accepted as a legitimate boxing sanctioning body. So now at this point, you've got 3 sanctioning bodies: the WBC, WBA, and the IBF, or the WBA, WBC, IBF, if you want to go chronologically in terms of which had been around the longest. So got 3 sanctioning bodies now. Then later, the World Boxing Organization was founded, and for a long time, the World Boxing Organization was not viewed as a legitimate boxing organization. Famous boxing historian Burt Randolph Sugar called it the he called it the WBOGUS, like W bogus for the WBO. WBOGUS, W bogus. George Foreman had a shot at undisputed champion Evander Holyfield and lost at this point in his comeback. Holyfield was holding the WBA, WBC, and IBF titles that he had won from Mike Tyson. Actually, that's kind of a oversight in this video. I should have stated the obvious, that Mike Tyson, when he came out and started knocking everybody out, he was able to scoop up all those titles and unify the belts, be the first person ever to have the WBA, WBC, and IBF when he was destroying all the other fighters in the division. So Tyson obviously had the 3 belts, lost those 3 belts to Buster Douglas, who lost those 3 belts to Holyfield, which brings me back to what I was talking about before, my oversight. So George Foreman had lost to Holyfield for the undisputed title, but then Foreman and Tommy the Duke Morrison fought for the WBO title, which Tommy Morrison won a 12-round unanimous decision to win his only title. Well, he actually had, I think, the IBC belt, which is a very low-regarded belt that doesn't even exist anymore. So Tommy Morrison actually had 2 belts, but they were very lightly regarded. But Tommy Morrison had the WBO title, and then Tommy Morrison lost that to Michael Bent, who lost it to Herbie Hyde, and then Herbie Hyde lost it to Riddick Bowe. Riddick Bowe had already beaten the man who beat the man who beat the man. Riddick Bowe had legitimately beat undisputed champion Evander Holyfield previously and lost the second fight with Holyfield. So Riddick Bowe was a former undisputed legitimate heavyweight champion, and then he knocked out Herbie Hyde to win the WBO title. So I think the WBO title started gradually gaining acceptance at that time, although it was not still universally accepted as a legitimate title, because Lennox Lewis was considered an undisputed heavyweight champion, yet he never won the WBO title. However, Henry Akinwande, who, fun fact, knocked out John Fury, Tyson Fury's dad, in his early career, Henry Akinwande had become WBO champion by beating Jeremy Williams, and then Henry Akinwande, I believe, vacated that title to fight Lennox Lewis for undisputed, because back in those days, the WBA, WBC, and IBF would not recognize the WBO. Like, if you were a champion of them, you couldn't fight for any of the other three titles. Then, I think both Klitschko's, their first title was the WBO title. So, on and on and on. Now the WBO is considered a legitimate heavyweight title. So, pretty confusing, huh, boxing fans? 4 different potential titles, and so much red tape and politics to go through to even possibly get a true undisputed. I mean, right now they're talking about Alexander Usyk wants millions and millions of dollars to wait on his WBO title shot. So this WBO title is something that Joshua and Fury, well, I assume Joshua more than Fury, really wants as part of that undisputed deal. Is now the title that they didn't care about in the 90s and 2000s, WBO, now that's like a essential part of the package for undisputed. That just shows the history of how far this has gone. Now, I want my listeners, before I wrap this video up, because it's getting too long, and I'm going to try to not make these videos too long, is above and beyond this 4 different sanctioning bodies, something that I consider completely absurd, and that I want to call on all the other boxing channels and boxing YouTubers and fans to join with me on, and that is this. Historically, the 2 most prestigious organizations have been the WBC and the WBA, and those 2 organizations have abused that recognition which they receive. What do I mean? I mean possibly the most absurd part of the entire boxing business, and that is the WBA's so-called, quote-unquote, regular title, meaning that they can have a super champion and then a regular champion, which is evidenced by when Vladimir Klitschko was the WBA regular champion, and, excuse me, Vladimir Klitschko was the WBA super champion, the real champion, and Alexander Povetkin was the WBA regular champion. And then that's also mirrored by the WBC and their quote-unquote interim champion. Now, isn't it bad enough that we have 4 different sanctioning bodies that have 4 different versions of boxing titles in all weight classes, not just heavyweight? I'm using heavyweight as an example. 4 different belts for every weight class. So in the old days, if you had 12 champions, now you can potentially have 48 throughout the weight classes. As if that's not confusing enough and devaluing enough to championship status. But the fact that in addition to 4 different world titles, organizations have a regular and interim champion, meaning actually 2 champions two champions per sanctioning organization? No, I think at that point, that's just too much. We fans need to not recognize any regular champions or interim champions. That does not mean you were heavyweight champion of the world. No disrespect to Povetkin, who I think is a great fighter, former Olympic gold medalist, has some great wins. But if you win the regular WBA belt when there's at the same time a super champion, to me, I'm calling on all boxing channels, YouTubers, and fans. We do not regard, that does not exist. If you're the WBA regular champion, you're not a champion. That doesn't exist. If you're the WBC interim champion, I don't know if I said interim for WBA, WBA regular champion or WBC interim champion, you are not a heavyweight champion. You are not a former heavyweight champion. That's just too much. We as fans have to reject it. However, you may disagree. I would like it very much if you leave your opinions in the comments section, like and subscribe. Hope this has been informative. See you next time.